guys, before we get to that, let's start with Jussie Smollett. He is on trial today for charges that he lied to Chicago police when the former actor and R&B singer reported being the victim of an attack some years ago. Dan, I remember we talked about this in great detail. You sniffed this one out from the very beginning here. And, you know, the thing that I think is really the travesty about this, we talked about Kim Foxx, the compromised prosecutor, before. But with so much gun crime in Chicago, so much violence there, you know, this is what just sucked up all the oxygen in that city, this case.
It certainly did, and this was sort of an early lesson in how the media just runs uncritically with a story that supports the narrative. Oh, Trump is a racist, and his supporters are racist, so it makes sense that a couple of Trump-supporting racists were waiting for Jussie Smollett at 2 a.m. outside of a subway when the temperature in Chicago was 20 degrees below zero. I think the biggest takeaway of this nearly 3 years later is that that sort of kicked off, John, in earnest. A 3-year stretch now of the media just not only being biased, we've always had media bias, but the media just reporting things that were not true, that members of the media initially knew not to be true. Everyone was suspect of it, John. It wasn't just me and you, but they ran with it nonetheless, because you had Kamala Harris tweeting out her support of Jussie Smollett and Maxine Waters saying Donald Trump bears responsibility for this. We've had 3 straight years now, and I think Jussie Smollett was a really big turning point in how America views media, because it taught us don't believe everything you see, or especially don't believe everything they present to you.
Yeah, and I would even go a little bit further back than that, Dan. I mean, it really goes back to the Ferguson case. You know, the hands up, don't shoot narrative. That was a complete lie. Everybody picked it up and ran with it, but it perpetuates and it continues. Karine, we have this situation in Chicago, and of course, Dan and Ari and I, and you know that all the MAGA chapter meetings happen at subways in downtown Chicago. The temperature has to be below 20 degrees below zero to have a quorum there. These are just the bylaws. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing about this too, and so many other things. When you take a step back and you just say, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. But so much of the establishment press just runs with this crap.
Yeah, and what's terrible is I thought it was super embarrassing for the press, because I think anybody in middle America saw this story and immediately knew it was true. And like Dan said, the people reporting it knew that it wasn't true also, but they ran with it anyway. But you'd think, okay, that was really embarrassing. Hopefully they can learn from that. And it seems they haven't. If you read the coverage of this trial today, you would think that people reporting it do believe that this really happened to Jussie, and it really was such a terrible hate crime against him. They don't even want to report that it was such a false lie, even now, even after all the embarrassment. So they've learned nothing. They're just going to keep doing this until we stop watching it, I guess.
I mean, Ari, let's be honest. The first sign we should have been a little skeptical here is he's an actor. I mean, actors do dramatic things sometimes, but we boil it down. You know, we read it, we could read it again. You know, a noose. They're going to lynch Jussie Smollett in the middle of downtown Chicago. I mean, this never made sense from the beginning, and I'm actually kind of embarrassed. I didn't pick up on it as quickly as Dan did.
I remember I was actually speaking on a college campus that weekend, and I was talking to some kids, and they had said, do you believe this whole thing? It just doesn't sound right. And I was shocked to hear a bunch of leftist college kids saying they didn't believe this whole mess. You would think they would be the first ones jumping on that train. And they were saying, no, there's so many problems with this. They didn't believe it from day one. But as you guys mentioned earlier, instead of talking about the dozens of people who are killed every single weekend by gun violence in Chicago, instead now we're talking about this guy, an actor who most people hadn't even heard of until all this happened. This is what is literally, as you said, sucking up all the oxygen, as opposed to every single weekend black teens being shot by the dozens in Chicago.
And we will talk about that too, but you know, you can't let these folks get off the hook here, Dan. You mentioned this is so important, especially we can compare, you know, the way the media treated Kyle Rittenhouse, who has now been exonerated, versus how they treated Jussie Smollett. Again, you know, so much about identity politics, or whatever you want to call it, here comes into play. And you know, they say, you know, you can't get a fair shake based on your race here, but Kim Foxx certainly gave Jussie Smollett a lot of leverage before this case actually came to trial.
Yeah, she did not want to believe that he was guilty of lying to police and causing them to misappropriate resources. And let's not forget, Jussie Smollett just happens to be a good friend of who? Michelle and Barack Obama, who apparently were behind the scenes saying, no, don't charge Jussie with lying to police. This is just an innocent misunderstanding. It wasn't. He lied, and he lied for personal gain. Remember, this was designed to get him a raise on his show Empire. He wrote a fake hate letter to himself, and when that didn't work, he orchestrated a fake attack where people supposedly threw bleach on him. This is the height of cynicism from this guy, that he thought being the victim of a racial hate crime would make him more valuable in the eyes of his employer and in Hollywood. I say throw the book at him.
Yeah, and this was just the most high profile of several other kind of false flag incidents that we saw. There were several in the military as well, Karine. You know, and again, you see when somebody who is an influencer does something like this, there's a trickle down effect. You know, a lot of these things turned out not to be hate crimes, of course. They were false flag things.
Yeah, and they were promoted by everyone in our political system, in our media. If this was just Jussie alone and he had released some Instagram post that said that this happened, I think people would have come to the conclusion that it was fake immediately. Like Ari said, like the college kids, it really didn't smell good from the beginning. But instead, we had Kamala Harris jumping in, and Barack Obama, and Michelle Obama, and Oprah, everyone coming in to back the story up, and they made this a thing. They made the whole story a real story when it could have just been like, gosh, Jussie posted something weird on Instagram.
That's such an important point. So often we hear them pumping air into these stories that are not really or shouldn't really be real. They ignore the things that really matter to most people. The things that are affecting us the most. You know, happens far too often. Great to see everyone, Karine, Dan, and Ari.